Okay, everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really cool review for you, or more of a preview really, from an up-and-coming microbrand startup called KAAL. K-A-A-L. And basically they have a very, as you can see, a very truly unique design aesthetic, guys. So this type of watch, I'd consider it, I guess you could maybe throw it in the everyday watch, because it's really honestly more of a wild card watch. But it does have a versatile blend of kind of sporty and dressy attributes. It doesn't necessarily skew in either direction. But yeah, this thing is pretty trick. It's got a lot going on. This is the Multiverse, and this is their Gaia or Earth dial, essentially, and it definitely has this kind of retro futuristic design aesthetic. These are going to be $369 on pre-order, or $699 full price once they're fully released. This is, of course, a pre-production prototype sample that's been going around to reviewers, and I'm happy to share with you guys because I think it actually is quite interesting. And it's definitely something that I would think is more for the watch lover and the enthusiast. I don't think there's gonna be very many casual buyers that are like, I need to know what time it is, let me buy this cool looking Earth dial. Of course, if you have somebody that's just a big planet, solar system type guy or gal, this is something that obviously I think they could enjoy as well. But for me, I think a real watch enthusiast would appreciate something like this, as you know, a piece of their collection. I don't think anybody's going to be, replacing their Rolex Submariner with this piece as their general everyday multi-purpose watch. But I think it's really, really cool. So let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in the hand, and take a closer look. All right, guys, check her out. Look at that. Pardon the studio lights and the reflection. That is partly in due to look at that dome. That is a dome of a dome right there, guys. It is really, really cool. Again, this is not a dress watch. It's not necessarily a sporty tool watch. It is something really, really different. It's one of those timepiece slash conversation piece, and you can see there's just so much going on, but it's actually quite intuitively laid out when you actually take a deeper look. Of course, I guess let's jump into it. The case size on here is 42 millimeters, so not overly huge. You do have a 47 millimeter lug to lug. Again, also quite wearable. Really, where you're gonna get kind of the shout in your face aspect is going to be from this profile. Check that out. If you count that high dome, double dome sapphire there, it's 19 millimeters. So that is chronograph territory. Although you're not getting a chronograph complication, you are getting still I think quite a complicated and complex layout when you consider the floating orbs and stars and whatnot that are all involved in here, and the hour disc as well. So very cool, and definitely a lot to enjoy there. This bezel is of course fixed, but really just nicely done. You can see the brushing. You do have this nicely knurled crown, which is signed with the KAAL logo, and it does give you great feedback. The movement that's inside that you can't really see is actually a Seiko Instruments NH35, so nothing too crazy from that standpoint, but quite reliable, and also would be real easy to replace if needed, or service for that matter. Now, that case back is actually pretty cool. It does have kind of a partial display window, and many of you are probably happy about that, honestly, because not everybody thinks that a Seiko movement is finished nice enough to put on display. So I think it's nice that it actually fits within the motif here and the style and design aesthetic, and it's not really just pushing to have a display case back just to have it. They actually do have that little peak window, which I think is actually pretty cool. Now, the dial, you actually have an adventuring base dial, so you can see that outer track there with the hours that actually turns. It's a disc. So essentially, you're going to be, it's 3 o'clock. And then when you look at the minutes, it's 3:18. There, that little star is the minutes hand, and then the little orb that is rotating around the globe is your seconds hand. So really cool and an interesting way to tell the time. Not your simple 3-hand. It doesn't have a date complication. It's not a chronograph, but it does offer you something visually to just kind of look at. And obviously, guys, as a dad, I have to tell you, the kids, they go bananas for this thing. They just want to grab the wrist and you just tear you down to about 3 feet high so they can take a closer look, because it's just generally a fun little piece to look at. There's so many little fine details. That little earth model there, suspended above the dial is very, very interesting and very cool. This is something that I would imagine, being a kid on a field trip and going into, one of those awesome little physical science museums. And this is something that I would imagine birthed from just that excitement and childhood glee while you learn about the solar system and planets and everything. So very, very cool. Also, that hour disc is transparent, so it's floating above that adventuring base dial, to be clear. Of course, you do have the North Star minute hand and then the sweeping orb seconds. The dial actually does have superluminova C3 with a little bit of BGW9 on that chapter ring, which is great. The water resistance is only 3 atmospheres or 30 meters, but honestly, that means it's splash proof and whatnot, rain proof, but this isn't something I'd want to go diving with by any means, or even maybe take into the pool. But I don't think anybody else is buying this thing to replace their Panerai, so I don't think that should be an issue in terms of water resistance. Now, the lugs on here are 22 millimeter, and then you do have this really nice premium Horween leather strap, which tapers from 22 down to 20. So it's a very nice mild taper, very thick, and of course it does help keep this thing on the wrist. You do have this nicely signed and finished buckle, fully milled, even down to the little finger of the buckle. Nicely finished there, which was real treat and bonus. So with all that said, let's actually get this piece on wrist and see how it wears. All right, guys. This thing is pretty wild. Again, the nice thing is, even on my 7 1/4 inch wrist, at this angle anyway, it doesn't seem really over large, because it's ultimately only a 42 millimeter, and it does have a only a 47 millimeter lug to lug, so it does sit on the wrist pretty centered and pretty well. It's just when you get to this angle, you're pretty much ready to be. This is something from the set of Men in Black, I imagine, right? You could see this as being some really cool piece that Will Smith whips out, and you find out that there's really a whole universe there living on the wrist. So really, really fun. Again, guys, and I think it's really just understanding the proposition for this piece. It's for those of you that are like, oh man, it's not a Rolex Explorer. You're absolutely right. It's not meant to be, right? This is not meant to be some super ultimately legible, balanced, go anywhere, do anything, timepiece. It's really not. It's what it is meant to be, and what it does is bring a lot of fun and a lot of joy. I have to say, even on the wrist right now, I have a pretty big smile on my face, just because of this thing. It's fun. Would I wear it every day? No. I mean, unless I was in some position or some job where this would really fit in. I really, I don't think that's the case. But as far as like, this is great for a kid's birthday party, something like that, or really just if you work in an office space and it's very sterile and you're kind of trapped in there, this could give you a little door literally to the outside world, pun intended. So yeah, I think this is a cool little fun wild card piece. Definitely something that I would love to see at a watch gathering, once the COVID bans lift and everything like that, and we can start meeting up face to face again, unmasked and unafraid. But until then, You know, this is just a fun little novelty, but I think this is definitely something that as you wear it out in public, you know, out on the streets, it definitely is a conversation piece, which I dig, and it gives people a reason to talk about what they love, and who doesn't like an excuse to do that. So let's go ahead and get into some Lume Shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay guys, we'll go ahead and hit the lights. Whoa, as you can see, check that out. This thing has got some very, very special lume. You have that nice bright blue hued chapter ring, and you can see it has a very nice little slope angle to it, which gives it, of course, more depth and kind of 3D nature there. You look at the dial, you do have, of course, that lume on the numerals, so that's still quite legible. You have that sweeping orb. You also have that North Star minutes hand, which is really cool. But for me, as much as I enjoy a good lume shot, I also like to pepper in a little bit of a low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of the times you're going to be in a space, you know, maybe indoors, maybe underneath an overhang, maybe coming in and out of your favorite vehicle, or maybe just walking underneath the shade of a tree. So I like to do these transition shots because it gives you an idea of what this watch will look like in, I guess, more realistic, less than optimal lighting. And I can even give you some harsh lighting, very high contrast, and which typically will expose some defects in the finish that are, you know, that can be washed out depending on, you know, the lighting conditions here in the studio. But guys, wow. Look at the way the light plays over that adventuring base dial. The stars sparkle. I love that. I love that it's not overpowering. It's just this nice little, you know, little pinch of some stardust in there, basically, right? And then, of course, that globe. You really get an idea of the depth when you have this low light transition. It really shows kind of the 3D nature of the piece, which is really nice, which I'm really digging, guys. This is different, of course. Again, this is not meant by any means to be anybody's first automatic watch or anybody's everyday timepiece. Maybe it could be, but I don't think that's really the demographic. I see it as something fun for collectors. So guys, closing thoughts on the wrist. This thing oozes personality. It is bubbly, yes. You know, with its really cool round features, but it's still pretty well received, I think. I think it feels good on the wrist, and it fits there, and there's a lot to enjoy. A lot of little design cues here and there that make it, you know, that make it fun. So as far as model variations go, it's also available in a sun or moon theme, essentially. So instead of that Earth hovering over out in the middle of space, you can have, you know, of course, so based on the colors, right, you want something a little more sedate and monochromatic. The moon can give you a bit of a, you know, a little gray orb space there, or the sun being more red, fiery, orange, yellows. Comparable models, guys, I don't know what else is out there that's like this. I'm sure in hot horology, I mean, there's, you know, those cool solar system, you know, well, guess what? Those are insanely unattainable in terms of price. This is, I think, a very cool, different take on kind of that idea, you know, that is reserved for very hot, high-end horology, but this is something that an average everyday collector can wear and really feel like they have something that's quite complex, quite different, and quite just well executed from a theme standpoint. So here, bottom line, this is just an awesome wild card watch that will really mesmerize you and your children. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do hit like, and if you haven't, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.